Once again, it's time for the Art Array, the show where we talk about all forms of art: books, movies, drawings, music, and more. I am your host, Nathan Crockett, author of My Soul Burned, aka the greatest story that has ever been written, according to my mom. Today's special guest is an Emmy-winning animator, Scott Strong.
So Scott, what type of animation do you do?
So I kind of do a smattering of everything really. Probably the only one that I do not do is stop motion. I just
Okay.
don't have the patience for that. I have a ton of appreciation for what they do. It is amazing, but I don't have the patience for that. But I do uh, 2D animation, so character animation in 2D, motion graphics in 2D. Actually, more specifically for both of them, I do it in 2.5D.
Okay.
That is an option. And then I have done some 3D animation as well. My career actually started off, kind of desiring to go into 3D. I got work as a 2D animator, stuck with that, and then kind of circled back to 3D after about 25 years or so, and did a couple of things that way. So
What are some of the things you've worked on, and what are you currently working on now?
I worked on the show openings for the Rosie O'Donnell show, and that ended up getting 3 Emmy nominations, and I won. I mean, I didn't win it, but it was like a team of us that won it. I have 2 Emmys. My very first show that I worked on was Kablam, which was on Nickelodeon back in the 90s, on Courage the Cowardly Dog and Kappa Mikey, which was on Nicktoons. So,
Nice.
and also Speed Racer: The Next Generation, which I thought was terrible. Don't watch it, but
Oh, okay.
it's it's one of those where you worked on it, you spent a lot of time on it, but
Do you still use some of the old school techniques, or has pretty much everything gone over to computer now?
most everything is done digitally now. I haven't been in a hand drawn studio, and by hand drawn I mean like paper and pencil. I haven't been in one of those in probably about 25 years.
Okay.
When I first started, it was kind of that inflection point where where animation was kind of starting to realize that the computer was a tool that they could use
Mhm.
and it could save time and money. But they were really just kind of sticking their feet in the water and testing it out and seeing what worked and what didn't. Back in those days, they were still drawing on a light board or a light box
Yeah.
and with a peg bar, and they were shooting that on a uh, oh, I can't even remember the name of it now, an Oxberry. Uh, and and if you don't know what an Oxberry is, it's basically a table with a pegboard on it, has 2 lights that shine down on it,
Mm.
and then a camera in the middle, facing downward. And so it just allows them to photograph that onto film and then, you know, test it out, or if they're going for the final, it allows them to shoot the final. But that's what they were doing back then. I was brought in to most places to kind of see how and where we could take that 2D, that whole process, and bring it into the computer. And oddly enough, like, even though that's what they hired me for, it wasn't always like, they were going to adapt to that. It was often kind of a kicking and screaming sort of experience to get
Yes.
people to go on board. But.
It's always kind of crazy because you just never know when it's going to work or not. Certain
Right,
things, because obviously there's tons and tons of fads that people think
right.
are going to be really big and then they're not. So it's always that kind of question like, oh, do I want to invest all this time in something that's going to fade out in just a few years? So I
Sure.
understand the skepticism.
Some of the software back then, even for animation, was kind of clunky. Like there was one called Animation Stand, and that piece of software was like $5,000 per station,
Oh
and
boy.
just really expensive. It claimed to do just about everything that you could do with a light box and a peg bar and all that. But the problem was is the workflow was really, really clunky.
Mm.
And then the technical support staff, like if you called them up, it was frequently the guy's wife, and she would get annoyed. And
Oh, jeez.
meanwhile, it's it's like 2 in the morning, and you want to go home also. There were a couple of things like that where they just really didn't know how they wanted to implement software into the process and how that could work. Eventually, Flash kind of took that place. Flash, which is now called Adobe Animate,
Mm.
um, eventually that took the place of Animation Stand. It was a lot cheaper, easier for people to use, um, but still kind of did the same sort of things.
Yeah, me, I've always been a fan of like the older school techniques, anyways, and I do think a lot of them kind of work better. If you look up on YouTube, there's all kinds of like really cool Disney stuff, and one of my favorite things is they would have the camera facing down and there would actually be like legitimate layers. So if they were like in a forest, they would draw, there'd be like a layer of the trees that were here, and then the
Hmm.
character in the middle, and then the trees in the background. And that's like why the depth perception looks so good in those, because there actually is real depth perception. And I understand why they're not doing it. It's a lot easier, but I do sort of miss that, the fact that
Sure.
that extra
Yeah.
effort did produce better results.
One of the things with that was that they would have to offset the colors to kind of compensate for the glass. Even though it's transparent, it still has a tint to it. So they
Yeah.
would have to offset the colors of the paint to get it to match the rest of the scene. And even the cells themselves. So if you had you mentioned Disney, if you had Mickey Mouse in a scene, and let's say he was kind of standing still, but his arms were moving, um, you wouldn't animate the body. So you'd just have one drawing, and then you'd have the arms kind of doing their own thing.
Mhm.
You'd have to also offset the colors for the different layers of celluloid that you were using to animate the arms and face or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that they don't always talk about that when they show things like the camera. That's called a multiplane camera, what you're referring to.
Yeah.
They don't always talk about that offsetting of the colors, but that was also a thing as well.
So that's like really interesting as far as, because the light would shine through. So there'd be like a slight tint of the other color on top of it, which would
Sure.
offset it unless you had to balance it out. So sometimes in animation, I'll notice that if there's like just one piece of the something move, like sometimes that will be a slightly different color, like
Hmm.
than the rest of it. And that's probably why I would imagine. Just
Yeah, they have people that would just specialize in how to match those colors and get them right for the layers. Like they would know how many layers it would be down, and then they could, kind of
Mhm.
match it to the topmost layer.
Yeah, a lot of work.
A lot of
That's
work, a
really
lot of work.
interesting though.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that a lot of that is now done on computers, and you do that in After Effects. Use the 2.5D features of After Effects to do that. And it's a pretty simple thing. You just kind of put a layer in space, and 3D space, and then move a camera through it. When I first started, After Effects did not have any 3D in it. So you would have, if you were going to do that, you had to really master scaling. You would have to, kind of scale up the different layers, but sort of understand that as things are further away, they move slower. So as something is perceived to
Right.
be slower away or further away, that would be moving slower towards the camera than something that's closer to the camera.
I was just about to ask you what you meant by scaling, just but then you kind of clarified it. So once your images are drawn and taken care of, how do you animate them? Like again, is it just sort of on the computer now, or is like how do you go about moving everything?
So what I like to do is, personally, I prefer to design on paper.
Okay.
Just I like that feeling, that tactile feeling of a pencil on the tooth of the paper,
Hmm.
and it's just a lot easier to get the idea out. Once I've done that, what I'll do is I'll either scan it or just take a picture with my phone and bring it into the computer, and I will trace over it in a software like Adobe Illustrator, and that's where I'll start doing what used to be called ink and paint, where they would do an ink line around it or something, and then color it in, and basically just clean up the drawing. From there, what I'll do is I'll bring it into another software. It'll be either After Effects or it'll be a software that's not as well known called Moho. Once it's inside of there, what I'll do is I'll do something called rigging. What you do in that is you create sort of a skeleton, and you'll take the pieces of the artwork and you'll attach it to the skeleton. So, for example, the head of the character would get attached to a head bone. The neck of the character would get attached to the neck bone.
Mhm.
Hands, shoulders, arms, etc., all the way down. And once you have that attachment made up, then you can start to work in human-like movements. There's a lot to it. It's a lot more complex than I'm making it. There's ways in which you have to kind of prepare the artwork to do that. That's how I prefer to do it. I have done, and I think I provided you some reference or some examples of doing hand drawn animation,
Yes.
which I did on also on the computer. I did that in Flash, with the idea there being to sort of match the design of a young boy. I think he's like 10 years old or something.
Mhm.
He's at the beginning of the video. So we were trying to match that, but those are just two ways. But the more common way that I do it is to rig the character and animate the skeleton.
Is there anything that you feel you do differently than most other animators?
So I like to kind of harness the what you can do on the computer as much as I can and
Mhm.
try to streamline that production line over time. You know, the first time that let's say you're working on something that's a series, that first time, that first episode,
Mhm.
things are going to be kind of clunky. The workflow is going to be kind of clunky, but I like to, you know, kind of look for ways to streamline that workflow so that the work happens as quickly as possible. Also the rigging itself, like there's surprisingly, especially in 2D, there's not as many people that do the 2D rigging. There's a lot of people that do it in 3D. I mean,
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's a whole workhorse of 3D, but in 2D, it's kind of not as common. There's a lot of people that, they want to draw every frame of an animation.
Interesting.
My thought on that is, it's nice, but when you have a client that's paying you, they want something fast.
Yeah.
I think that's what I do that's differently from a lot of other people. Also, just to further answer the question,
Sure.
I'm more of an end-to-end kind of animator, meaning that I can start at a script and or I doing my own script if I need to, and bring that all the way to the end. I can do every
Oh,
station in between, background design, background painting, layout, character design, script, editing, sound editing, all of that. I'm not the best sound editor, but I can do it
yeah.
in a pinch. So yeah,
It's hard. I know when I did my
yeah,
movie, the sound was the hardest part. Like
yeah,
by
yeah.
far. Everyone I had always heard people say that, and it is. There's a reason everyone says it. So
Yeah, I'm not the best at it, but I can do it well enough. It's one of these things that once you start to put it into your video, it makes all the difference.
oh yeah.
Um, it just everything just comes to life once you start adding sound effects or music or something like that.
Yeah. What do you think is the trickiest part to get right about animation?
So lifelike movement is really, really tricky,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with a living character. It it has it has a responsibility to it that you don't want to have something that looks robotic. It's
Mhm.
easy enough to kind of say, put one leg in front of the other and call it a walk cycle, but if you look at it, just as that, then you're going to have something that looks like a robot walking across the screen, when really what you want is, something like Mickey Mouse moving
Yeah.
across the screen, or Bugs Bunny or something like that. So that's really challenging to do. Another thing that's really challenging is, getting sometimes you'll get a script from a client and they're looking for you to kind of illustrate a concept that they themselves don't even know how it's going to be visually,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so you're trying to, kind of come up with something. I have been working on this educational series about personal finances for middle school kids. There's some concepts in there where I'm just like, how do I do that? How do I show that? What do I put on screen at this point? Sometimes I'm just, in the storyboard stage, I'm just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
Those two things are very very challenging to do.
I don't know if you ever watched the Snyder cut of the Justice League movie.
No, I haven't.
There's a scene in that where Cyborg actually goes into like the economic system and everything like that. You might want to use that as a reference. I think it's streaming on HBO Max. But there's a great scene where he like kind of like I said, he's going like inside the system and everything. It's like a really cool visual representation. So that might give you some ideas.
Right, right. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. But aside from that, I actually think it's really great that some at least some schools are like teaching people about finances because I know that's one thing that a lot of people complain about. Like we all need money, we all live
Yeah,
by money, credit, economics, and they don't really teach you any of that stuff in
yeah.
school unless you actually go to college and take classes for that specifically. But as far as like just in the general education, it's not really there. So that's great that you're doing that.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I could, kind of elaborate more on it. It's kind of behind a paywall for the
Hmm.
client. But yeah, I agree. It's one of these things where, a lot of people when they grow older and they get kind of thrown out there in the world and they don't understand how some of these concepts work, they get, bitter, angry, and resentful.
Hmm.
And, if there's a foundation there. I would like to believe that a lot of that resentment would kind of go away. It is a project that I believe in. It's just sometimes very very challenging to kind of illustrate a concept. In fact, working on it, there's some things that I've learned. Like, oh, I didn't know that. And they were talking about the difference between a bank and a credit union, and that was kind of interesting. I didn't. It was one of those kind of moments when I read it in the script.
I did know there was a difference, but I didn't really know what the difference is.
This is off topic, obviously, but a bank is more like publicly owned shares, and a credit union is more privately owned shares.
And then, what are your overall goals as an animator?
I would like to kind of be a lot more independent as far as clients goes and as far as stability goes. I'm kind of working on learning how to market myself
Mm,
a lot more, um, so that there's a lot of highs and lows in as far as like employment and
yeah.
animation, and I'd like to kind of even that out a lot more. Um, I've always wanted to have my own studio, and in order to do that, you've got to be able to bring in clients.
Hmm.
You've got to be able to have people understand that there's a benefit to what you do. I think there's a mindset out there about animation that animation is for kids, and it's really not true. Just about any time you turn on the television, anytime there's an advertisement or a movie or whatever,
Hmm.
animation is involved
Yeah.
at some level. Either you have some great big special effect that comes on screen, or you have text that comes into the screen in an
Yeah.
interesting way. But there is animation going on there just about every time, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think that I often think to myself, like, some of the things that I've worked on have made clients millions and millions of dollars. you know,
Yeah.
uh, because I've worked on projects for companies like McGraw Hill and Unilever and big big name companies, MTV Animation and things, and they've made millions of dollars off of things that I've worked on. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things that that people don't think about and don't realize. So,
Like I think the most difficult part is just convincing people that they need you. Because like
right,
obviously I think anyone doing a commercial realizes they're gonna need an animator, but trying to convince
right,
someone, hey, you need me. I think that's the
right.
most difficult part in marketing yourself.
Sure, yeah, yeah. Also, just kind of like being able to like get these people to talk to them to get your foot in the
Yeah,
doors is
yeah.
also just that's a huge thing.
So outside of like art and animation, what do you like to do for fun?
So my wife and I do a fair amount of traveling. She's actually from France. You know, she's taken me to France twice and just a wonderful experience both times. And then earlier this year, we went down to Orlando. It was her first time south of Washington, D.C. She had like a work related conference that she had to go to. So
Okay.
we were down there. We went to Disney, we went to NASA,
Oh wow.
all of that. And then there's a lot of day trips, especially around here in New Jersey. There's a lot of kind of Revolutionary War
Oh,
things
wonderful.
to see and do here. Um, and so yeah, we get out a lot. I also like to just kind of go on long walks, hiking, or kind of that kind of a thing.
Mm.
Uh, I just sort of enjoy those. And cooking. Every night I cook with my son.
Oh, nice. What is your favorite piece of animation or animated movie?
There's this part at the end of Ratatouille,
Mm.
and it's right after, when the story is already finished up and they're going into the end credits. There's this part there where they do this 2D thing. It was designed by a guy named Nate Ragg, and it is fantastic. Um, it's one of my favorite pieces of animation. When I saw that in the theater, I was like, the movie was already great,
Mhm.
and then they put this on the end of it, and I was just like, oh man, that's fantastic. So that was one. There's another kind of trailer for a video game, Rock Band.
Mhm.
Do you remember that video game?
I do.
Yeah, so everybody was playing it. They had a Beatles version of it that came out, and there's a trailer for that. It was designed by Robert Valley, and I think it was worked on by J Jamie Hewlett, I think.
Okay.
Um, and it was just awesome. Like it was another one, much like Ratatouille. When the clip came online, I watched it over and over and over again. I just was so blown away by it.
And then the last one here, is there anything that you like wanted to share with people? Any topic that you wanted to kind of get to that I didn't already ask you?
So I hear a lot of people talking about AI,
Okay.
and I there's a lot of I see a lot of people that have a strongly negative reaction to it. I am neither. I'm kind of agnostic about it at the moment, but I'm sort of watching to see what happens. It's definitely one of these things where they're not putting the cat into the bag. You're it's out there. It's here with us whether we want it to be or not. And we kind of have to figure out where we're going to fit inside of that. I also see a lot of people out there that are very pro AI. So I'm seeing a lot of polarity there. I'm seeing people that are kind of revulsed by it, and then I'm seeing people that are all excited because they feel like they are an artist now or can be creative. A lot of art is about having good taste, and because you're able to use an AI to create an image doesn't mean that you have the taste to know whether or not that works. The people that are using it to kind of do an end run around not having a skill set for art are going to find themselves in a position where they're doing stuff that isn't working and they don't know why. And I think
Mm.
that's where an artist is going to come in. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of people that do have the skill set that are understandably offended by AI being out there, and yet at the same time, they need to find a way to learn to work with it. Because again, it's they're not going to be able to put that one back in the box. It's out there. Another thought just popped into my head is that with all the AI out there, I think that there's a strong possibility that real art might actually go up in value.
It is kind of a tricky situation because also I was just thinking too, like if you look at someone like Christopher Nolan, I'm sure you know who Christopher Nolan is.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean his movies are huge just because he's at a different level than everyone else. Like
Right.
the tickets for the Odyssey are already sold out. Like
Right.
so yeah, that is a good point too. I can kind of see advantages and disadvantages there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's a much more nuanced topic than hey, I hate AI or hey, I love AI. It's
Hmm.
way more nuanced than that. I guess what I'm getting at, with the people that really love it, um, I can see a lot of marketers being like, oh, this is great. I can make my own commercial and I don't have to hire a film crew.
Yeah.
And I think that that is going to be where people start to realize, hey, wait a second, maybe I need somebody to step in and say, no, that's not a good idea, or this is a great idea, or, kind of
Hmm.
somebody that understands the nuance of what they're doing. Um, so yeah, I think that's would be an example of where I see uh, AI having a maybe a bit of a downfall or a bit of an issue,
Yeah.
out there. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show. And
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, I hope you're enjoying these videos. As I said before, any feedback is welcome. All of our links are in the description below. The next video will be up Friday.